Okay, so we have cleared out Manasseh and Amon, and now we're getting down to the time of Josiah. There's actually a fair amount to say about this time period, and we're going to be doing this kind of in waves. We're now in the second half of the 600s BC. Let me stop that right now. Manasseh had a very long reign. Oh no, cats. I let one of my cats out, and she's fussing around and causing trouble. Okay, so Manasseh had a very long reign, 55 years, half a century plus. Now, he might not have been sole ruler for that entire time, but he still had a very long reign. It took up a lot of time. Hezekiah, I believe, from the dates that I've seen, is believed to have died in the year 686 BC. And Josiah begins his reign, I think, in the year 640 BC. So Manasseh's reign, and then his son Amon, who only reigned for 2 years, or parts of 2 years at least, they get down to 640 BC. So now we're in the time of Josiah. Josiah becomes king in 640 BC. He reigns for 31 years and dies in the year 609 BC. So we're going to kind of skip the first half of the 600s BC. We're just going to kind of, Manasseh was reigning during that time. Hezekiah was reigning at the beginning of that time. And then Manasseh reigned, and he was terrible. And he repented eventually. I don't know when that happened. I don't know where in that time frame that happened. Probably late. Probably pretty late, but I don't really know. During this time period, Assyria is still the main power. Sennacherib is defeated by God outside Jerusalem, and he goes back to Assyria. But he does not, his power is not broken. His power as king and his power essentially as the human ruler of the world at that time is not broken. He doesn't apparently bother Hezekiah and Judah again, but he is not defeated as the dominant force in the world at that time. Sennacherib actually outlives Hezekiah. He lives 20 more years. So Hezekiah dies in the year 686 BC. Sennacherib goes on to live to the year 681 BC and finally dies in a coup with 2 of his sons, which we have recorded in the book of Isaiah. That's in 681 BC. And then his son Esarhaddon becomes king, and then Esarhaddon has a son called Ashurbanipal, or something like that, who reigns around the same time Manasseh does, in the mid-600s BC. And Ashurbanipal might actually be the worst of all the Assyrian kings. It's during the time of Ashurbanipal that Assyria destroys Egypt, finally, and we'll read about that in the book of Nahum, a prophet named Nahum that we'll get to eventually. And it's during that time, in the mid-600s BC, when Assyria reaches its height of its power, its zenith. And this is during also the time of Manasseh, basically. So that's what's going on in the 600s BC. And we're basically going to skip that. We've already basically skipped that by covering the reign of Manasseh so quickly. And now we're down to the second half of the 600s BC, 640 BC. Josiah becomes king. He's only 8 years old. And Assyria's dominance is going to come to an end here in the upcoming decades at the hands of Babylon, which had been fighting Assyria for a couple hundred years already. Babylon hated the Assyrians more than anybody did. You know, the Assyria-Babylon feud was even worse than the Assyria-Israel or Assyria-Judah feud. And we read about that in the account of Isaiah and Hezekiah when whatever his name was, the guy in charge of Babylon at the time, who was fighting Assyria, sent his envoys to Hezekiah to apparently, the text doesn't explicitly say this, but most likely the purpose behind it, or part of the point behind it, was to form an alliance between Judah and Babylon, an anti-Assyrian alliance. And Merodach Babylon, whatever his name was, and he was eventually deposed. Actually, he had been deposed twice by the king of Assyria, and Babylon was under Assyrian occupation. We read about that in Isaiah, that the king of Assyria was also the king of Babylon. So when they talk about the king of Babylon, it may not be talking about like a Nebuchadnezzar type king of Babylon. It may be talking about like the king of Assyria, who also happens to be the king of Babylon, because Assyria ruled Babylon at that time. And that's all been going on. That will change, though, as we go forward. Babylon will rise up and will destroy Assyria. And Assyria will fade from the history books, and Babylon will become the big power. That's coming up. Right now we're in the time of Josiah, which starts in the year 640 BC. Josiah reigns for 31 years, which takes him down to 609 BC, and he dies in battle against the Pharaoh of Egypt. We'll read about that later. We're not going to get that far of the narrative today. Today we're only going to go through the first part of the time of Josiah, up until the point where he realizes just how badly Judah and the people of God have erred over the centuries, and does what he can to bring about a national repentance. That's where we're going to get through today, as far as just. And then after that, next time around, we're going to read the book of Zephaniah, who prophesied sometime during that time frame. Okay, so 2 Kings, starting at the beginning of chapter 22. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. I don't believe he was co-regent at any point, because he was only 8. He reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. So he only lived to be 39 years old. That alone should tell us that something went wrong at the end of his reign. If you're 8 years old and you begin to reign, you should be living longer than 31 more years. 31 years is a long time in and of itself, but since he started at age 8, it's actually kind of disappointingly short, because that means he dies at age 39. We'll read about that eventually. And he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah. She was from Bozkath, or Bozkath, He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and walked in all the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. In the 18th year of his reign, so he was 26 years old this time, King Josiah sent the secretary, Shaphan, son of Azallah, the son of Meshullam, to the temple of the Lord. He said, "Go up to Hilkiah the priest, the high priest, and have him get ready the money that has been brought into the temple of the Lord, which the doorkeepers have collected from the people." I guess it happened when you went into the temple. You gave them your money. "Have them entrust it to the men appointed to supervise the work on the temple, and have those men pay the workers who repair the temple of the Lord, the carpenters, the builders, and the masons. The laborer is worthy of his hire. Those who make their living off the gospel should be paid by those who benefit from their work on the gospel." We read about that in the New Testament, and that is relating specifically to the ministry of preaching. But even here, it's like the men who work on the temple deserve to get paid for their work on the temple. "The carpenters, the builders, and the masons. Also have them purchase timber and dressed stone to repair the temple. But they need not account for the money entrusted to them, because they are acting faithfully." Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the secretary, so when Shaphan went to go talk to him about this, I guess this is the response he got, "I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord." He gave it to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan the secretary went to the king and reported to him, "Your officials have paid out the money that was in the temple of the Lord, and have entrusted it to the workers and supervisors at the temple." Then Shaphan the secretary informed the king, "Hilkiah the priest has given me a book." And Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. It's not really clear exactly what this book of the law is. It's hard to state definitively like what the contents of this book were. Was it all the law of Moses from beginning to end, Genesis to Deuteronomy? Was it part of it? Was it only Deuteronomy? Part maybe that had been missing for some time? I'm not really clear. I don't think anyone really knows. But they have found some copy that had been apparently misplaced or lost or maybe hidden at some point in the past. Maybe in the days of Manasseh when he went on his rampage, or maybe Ahab even before him. It's hard to say. We really don't know. The text does not illuminate how long this copy had been missing, how long this text had been missing, or what even really it was. But there was something that they had lost access to, for whatever the reason, that they were regaining access, inadvertently. They just happened to find it while they were cleaning out and praying in the temple. And so now now they've heard it. So now they know what the word has said that they weren't aware of before. So now they have to decide what they're going to do. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his robes. That's an act of either anger or mourning or both. He gave these orders to Hilkiah the priest, Achim son of Shaphan, I guess it's the same Shaphan, I don't know, maybe a different Shaphan, I don't know. Akbar son of Micaiah, Shaphan the secretary, and Asaiah the king's attendant. So here's his orders. Go and inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all of Judah, about what is written in this book that has been found. So he needs to know. He wants to inquire of the Lord. Great is the Lord's anger that burns against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book. They have not acted in accordance with all that is written there concerning us. You need to not do that. So Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Akbar, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to speak to the prophetess, Huldah, so a woman prophet. You need to stop this. Who was the wife of Shallum, son of Tikra, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. That's a lot of names and genealogies and sons of. Her genealogy is linked to her husband's genealogy. We know who she is, and we know her genealogy through her husband's genealogy. Come on, you stop that. She lived in Jerusalem in the 2nd district. She said to them, I don't know if she was the only one qualified, or if she happened to be the nearest. They apparently knew her since she was related, either her husband or her husband's genealogy, the keeper of the wardrobe. So maybe they knew her because she was involved, or her husband at least was involved in the temple wardrobe. Or maybe she was the only one available. Zephaniah will minister during the time of Josiah, but he might come along later. Or maybe he came along earlier and died, who knows. Jeremiah is going to be around during this time. We'll read a long book written by him, and he got his start during this time. He may have been too young yet, though. He may have been still a young man that didn't have the credibility needed. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't in town. I don't know. But for whatever the reason, and the text does not explain why, they didn't go to Zephaniah or Jeremiah or any other male prophet of God. They went to a lady. They went to what's her name? Huldah. And they didn't seem to have a problem with it. There's no indication in the text, either here or in Chronicles, that any of them were reluctant to ask this lady for advice. She said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said." And by the way, they're asking her for a question on leadership. Okay, so this is a very serious question. They're essentially asking her if she can authorize their canon, their writings of what we would call the Old Testament. So this is a very important question that can't be dismissed as being something trivial or not important. These are powerful men. These are the civic leaders of the country asking this lady prophet whether or not she can confirm whether the scriptures they have are the actual word of God. They're asking her a question that they're asking her essentially to authorize the canon. So it ends up being a woman who does this. I don't know what that says. Okay, I don't know, but that's what we have here. That's what we have written for us. So you stop this right now. She said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me," which of course would be the king, "this is what the Lord says. I am going to bring disaster on this place and its people, according to everything written in the book the king of Judah has read." Now that would seem to indicate that at least part of what the king of Judah has read is Deuteronomy, because Deuteronomy has a list of curses at the end of it, where God lays out the punishments for disobedience. Now then again, Leviticus has that too. Deuteronomy simply repeats that. So I'm not entirely sure. "Because they have forsaken me, and burned incense to other gods, and provoked me to anger by all the idols their hands have made. My anger will burn against this place, and will not be quenched. It cannot be put out. Tell the king of Judah. Now, God's anger does not burn forever. We read about this all over the prophets, and we'll see this play out in the course of the story as we go forward. There's a difference between the fire not being quenched and the fire going out on its own. We hear this term unquenchable fire, and we associate that with eternal, never-ending, burning fire. But unquenchable fire means it can't be put out. No one is going to put out the fire until it is done burning up whatever it's burning up. And that is different from fire that never burns itself out. Just because the fire is unquenchable does not mean it is eternal. Just because the fire is not going to be put out before it burns up whatever it's burning up does not mean it will not go out once it's done burning up whatever it burns up. Remember, fire is a cleansing substance. We read about that in Numbers. There's the forces of water and fire are both used for cleansing and punishment. So anyway, what was I? Hang on. The cat did that to me. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me. This is what the Lord says. I am going to bring disaster on this place and its people, according to everything written in the book of the king of Judah has read. Because they have forsaken me, and turned in and burned incense to other gods, and provoked me to anger by all the idols their hands have made, my anger will burn against this place and will not be quenched. Tell the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the words you heard. Because your heart was responsive, and you humbled yourself before the Lord, when you heard what I have spoken against this place and against this people, that they would become accursed and laid waste, and because you tore your robes and wept in my presence, I have heard you, declares the Lord. Therefore I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see all the disaster I am going to bring on this place. So they took her answer back to the king. So God is going to do what he promised and threatened and swore long ago that he would do. He is going to bring disaster on Judah and Jerusalem. But he will not do it in the days of Josiah. Okay. Josiah became king in 640 BC. This is happening, 16 years later? Was that what we said? The 18th year of his reign, excuse me. So that's now, 622 BC? God is going to bring judgment on Jerusalem and Judah and on the temple. It's going to happen. The decision has been made. But it will not happen until after the days of Josiah. Now, Josiah himself will not really die in peace. He's actually going to die in battle, disgracefully. But the destruction and disaster that occurs on the kingdom and the temple will not happen until after he will not see that. This actually kind of goes back to what we saw earlier at the end of Isaiah. Remember how we read at the end of Isaiah? Isaiah 57, starting at the beginning of the chapter. The righteous perish, and no one ponders it in his heart. Devout men are taken away, and no one understands. That the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. Josiah is kind of an example of this, because he is not going to see the disaster that God is going to bring upon Judah and Jerusalem. God will spare him from that by having him die first, and the disaster won't happen until after his death. Hezekiah had a similar thing back at the end of his days. God said, you're going to die in peace, but the Babylonians are going to come for your stuff and for your descendants sometime after you're dead. So there's an element of that in here. These devout men who humble themselves before God are not going to see the full extent of God's judgment on the people in their own day and time. They'll be spared that by dying before that happens. 2 Chronicles 34, starting at the beginning of the chapter. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and walked in the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. In the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he had only been 16 years old. We didn't read about this in Kings. Kings skipped to the 18th year of his reign when he was 26. Now it's the 8th year of his reign when he's 16. While he was still young, he began to seek the God of his father David. So at 16 years old, he made the decision to follow Israel's God, become a Jehovah worshiper. He didn't have, we read about a boy king named Joash before, the one who went into hiding in the days of Athaliah, the evil queen. And he had a temple who hid him. He had a priest who hid him in the temple and brought him out. The priest was alive. The boy king, growing up to become king, Joash, was righteous and acted righteously. But when Jehoiada, I think his name was, died, Joash turned bad. Josiah doesn't even have the benefit of having a faithful mentor to guide him. He becomes king at age 8 and has to pretty much figure it out for himself. And apparently when he's 16, he decides to go after Israel's God. In his 12th year, so now he's 20, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of high places, Asherah poles, carved idols, and cast images. Under his direction, the altars of the Baals were torn down. He cut to pieces the incense altars that were above them, and smashed the Asherah poles, the idols, and the images. I don't know if these are the ones that Manasseh didn't get around. You know, Manasseh did this to begin with, and then he tried to reform afterwards. Maybe he didn't complete the Reformation, or maybe Amon during his brief reign put these back up, or maybe during Josiah's early reign when he was young and didn't have any real authority, they went up. Who knows? He cut to pieces the incense altars that were above them, and smashed the Asherah poles, the idols, and the images. These he broke to pieces, and scattered over the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. He burned the bones of the priests on their altars. I don't know if he killed them first, or if he had them dug up and burned after they were already dead. And so he purged Judah and Jerusalem. In the towns of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, as far as Naphtali, that's even, well, Simeon's not in the north, but Manasseh, Ephraim, and Naphtali are now the remnants of the northern kingdom now, and the ruins around them. He tore down the altars and the Asherah poles, and crushed the idols to powder, and cut to pieces all the incense altars throughout Israel. Then he went back to Jerusalem. So apparently Assyria was not governing this territory of northern Israel all that closely. This would be now in the 620s BC. Assyria is about to fall to Babylon. I don't know if maybe they have their hands full of other things, or if they just haven't been paying that much attention to the northern kingdom of Israel, which they conquered 100 years earlier. But apparently the king of Judah didn't really encounter any resistance when he went up to the former kingdom of Israel and did all this. Then he went back to Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, so now this connects back up with what we read in Kings, he's 26 years old now, to purify the land and the temple, he sent Shaphan, son of Azaliah, and Maaseiah, the ruler of the city, so I guess just the mayor of Jerusalem apparently, with Joash, son of Jehoaz, the recorder, to repair the temple of the Lord his God. They went to Hilkiah the high priest, and gave him the money that had been brought into the temple of God, which the Levites, who were the doorkeepers, had collected from the people of Manasseh, Ephraim, and the entire remnant of Israel, that would be the northern kingdom of Israel, which had fallen 100 years earlier, and from all the people of Judah and Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. That's the remaining kingdom of Judah. So there were some survivors who stayed around, who hung around, who migrated south, and who continued worshiping the God properly and going to the temple like they should. So they weren't totally wiped out. There was a remnant. Then they entrusted it to the men appointed to supervise the work of the Lord's temple. These men paid the workers who repaired and restored the temple. They also gave money to the carpenters and builders to purchase dressed stone and timber for joists and beams of the buildings that the kings of Judah had allowed to fall into ruin. The men did the work faithfully. Over them to direct them were Jahath and Obadiah, Levites descended from Merari. That's one of the original founders of the clan of Levi. And Zechariah and Meshullam descended from Kohath. The Levites, all who were skilled in playing musical instruments, had charge of the laborers and supervised all the workers from job to job. Remember how the Levites, the ones who weren't priests, were the blue-collar workers who did the work on the temple itself, and they also played the instruments. There was a branch of them, at least, that were in charge of conducting the worship services at the temple. So they were professional worshipers, and as well as just taking care of the temple furnishings and the grounds and being the gatekeepers and the guardsmen and all that. They weren't priests. They were the tribe of Levi, but they were not from the family of Aaron, so they could not be priests, so they did this instead. Some of the Levites were secretaries, scribes, and doorkeepers. While they were bringing out the money that had been taken into the temple of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the Lord, the book of the law of the Lord that had been given through Moses. Hilkiah said to Shaphan the secretary, I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord. He gave it to Shaphan. Then Shaphan took the book to the king and reported to him, Your officials are doing everything that has been commanded to them, or committed to them. They have paid out the money that was in the temple of the Lord, and have entrusted it to the supervisors and workers. Then Shaphan the secretary informed the king, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his robes. He gave these orders to Hilkiah, Ahikam son of Shaphan, Abdon son of Micah. I don't know if that's the prophet Micah, probably not. Shaphan the secretary, and Asaiah the king's attendants. Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for the remnant in Israel and Judah about what is written in this book that has been found. Great is the Lord's anger that is poured out on us, because our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord. They have not acted in accordance with all that is written in this book. Hilkiah and those the king has sent with him went to speak to the prophetess Huldah, who was the wife of Shallum, son of Tokhath, the son of Hasrah, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem, in the second district. She said to them, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me, this is what the Lord says. I am going to bring disaster on this place and this people. All the curses written in the book that have been... All the curses written in the book that have been read in the presence of the king of Judah. Because they have forsaken me, and burned incense to other gods, and provoked me to anger by all their hands have made. My anger will be poured out on this place, and will not be quenched. Tell the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the words you heard. Because your heart was responsive, and you humbled yourself before God, when you heard what he spoke against this place and its people, and because you humbled yourself before me, and tore your robes and wept in my presence, I have heard you, declares the Lord. Now I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see all the disaster I'm going to bring on this place and on those who live here. So they took her answer back to the king. I'm going to stop there. We're going to stop right there. We'll go on with 2 Chronicles 34 later on, and then we're going to go, so we're almost done with these history books, but we're not quite done yet. We've still got about 30 or 40 more years of Judahite history to go through, and several more prophetic books. Next, we'll be reading from the book of Zephaniah. It's hard to date Zephaniah too precisely because we don't know exactly when he spoke. But he spoke sometime during the reign of Josiah, probably early in the reign of Josiah. For some reason, he was not consulted about the book of the law they found in the temple. So I don't know if that means he had already done his ministry as a prophet and was finished, or if he hadn't done it yet and he started his ministry, but after that, I don't know. But we're going to read Zephaniah, And then, I don't know exactly if I'm going to read Nahum right after that. I might. Nahum speaks to Assyria. He does not speak to Jerusalem or Judah. So we can kind of fit Nahum in there pretty much wherever it seems most appropriate. But we're going to do that, and then we have Habakkuk and Obadiah, and then we begin Jeremiah, which is another long one, and Ezekiel. Right after that, we're going to have Ezekiel, which is not a long one. So we got plenty of material left to go through, even though we're only a couple chapters away from finishing off Kings and Chronicles. That goal is still a pretty good distance away. It's not as close as it seems based on how far we in. It's not as close as it seems based on how far we are into the actual books of Kings and Chronicles. We're only a couple chapters from the end of those, but it's going to take us a while to get there.